is I want to take you through a few things that I always consider when it comes to people seeing weird shit when they're in airplanes. And I know what you're thinking. Like one of the things the things that you always consider, like how much are you like, are you doing this? And I'll be honest, I love UFOs. I love stuff like this, and I think it's always important to kind of touch on the basic stuff first, and try your best to explain what happened in a very simple way using this little kind of checklist, right? Some of the most obvious explanations. And then if you can kind of look at those and say, it just doesn't make sense, then you get to move on to the fun stuff, right? And so let's go ahead and start with that checklist, okay? So first, we have to consider whether or not those pilots are lying as a joke between the two of them. And I guess technically that could be true, but why would they do that is really my question. I mean, imagine if they were. First of all, let's just imagine they were. Imagine that the one pilot was on like his last day before retirement and he was like, "You know what, man? Watch this." And he radioed it in. It was like some sort of like prank that he thought he pulled. Like that's an all-time prank. That is very, very funny. I know a lot of people, and I know people who are listening to this right now that would absolutely do that prank or at least consider it, right? I shouldn't say they would absolutely do it, but there are some people that I know are listening to this right now that like 99% chance they would consider pulling this prank. And and r- outside of those people, I don't think I'm the only person that knows people like this. So maybe these pilots are people like that. Maybe they're lying. Maybe it's like a little like, ha ha ha, we pulled it off. We pretended we saw something. But I think unfortunately for that explanation, we would really need to consider that the pilots are basically making dangerous claims. I mean, it's not like people aren't following up on this. It's not like the government isn't curious about this. So they would have to do a bunch of interviews. They would probably be sending planes to up to this area to just check and see if they see something. It just seems like a lot of trouble to go to for kind of a stupid prank. And also, we heard that audio. Like, we all heard the same audio. That doesn't sound like a guy that's like joking around. I don't think a lot of airline pilots are like tricksters when it comes to their job, right? They're not, these guys aren't doing like magic shows for kids or something. Like, their job isn't a job that's based in silliness. It's a serious thing. I don't think a lot of these people fuck around when it comes to their job. So, while I'm not saying it's impossible, it seems very unlikely. And hopefully by the time the pilot that made that radio call is able to talk publicly, because I'm sure he's not able to right now. I'm sure they're looking into this stuff. But hopefully when he is allowed to at some point, it might be years from now, I can have him on this podcast and we can talk about it. I think that would be awesome. I would love to do that. But once again, I just don't know while that is a simple explanation, I don't know that that one makes a ton of sense. And so then there's a second thing that I always try to look at when these situations occur, and that is the question of some sort of naturally occurring phenomena. So it's absolutely possible. I mean, like ball lightning is a thing. That's a crazy thing that happens. If you've never heard of ball lightning, you should look it up. Maybe I'll do an episode about it at some point, but you should look it up. It's crazy. There's a lot of like naturally occurring things that happen in the sky and can happen to planes that easily explain stuff that people see, like that passengers see. The problem that I have with that, even though it probably would satisfy Occam's razor, it's very simple, is pilots are aware of that stuff. Like most of them have encountered crazy shit like natural phenomena when they're in the air. I mean, it's not like these guys and girls have never flown through fucking storms, right? Like the men and women that are pilots are once again they're very well trained. They've kind of seen it all. And so the phenomena that they haven't experienced themselves, they're at least aware of. So if they haven't experienced it themselves, they probably have friends who have. They're aware that it could happen. And so once again, if it were that, I think they would have mentioned that perhaps.